Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our garden. Not our vegetable garden this week, mind you, but the rest of our garden. I live in Spokane, Washington, which is located about 300 miles east of Seattle. And our hardiness zone here ranges from 5B to 6A. So here we are in fall, and there are so many great things we can be doing out in our landscapes. There's also some things you shouldn't do this time of year. So I'm going to talk about both, and I've got a lot of information to cover, so let's get started. Leave the leaves. You've probably heard of this before, but the rationale behind not raking up all of your leaves is because beneficial insects overwinter in leaf litter. I know we all like a tidy garden at the end of the season. I totally get that. But if you want to have less insect problems, at least leave the leaves underneath trees and shrubs. Let's talk about roses, and isn't this one a beauty? That's a David Austin English rose called Darcy Bustle. You do not want to prune your roses in the fall, even though it can be very tempting. Pruning encourages tender new growth, which is very susceptible to winter kill. Wait until the spring to do your pruning. Now there is one exception to that rule. Do you see this really long rose cane? Those can whip around in winter winds, damaging both the rose bush itself and any plants around the area, like all of these clematis vines. So this is okay to cut back. If you're growing grafted roses and you get cold winters, mulch your roses thickly with grass clippings, pine needles, or another kind of mulch. Grafted roses are rose plants where a variety of one rose is grafted onto a hardy rootstock. Because of this, they can be more susceptible to winter kill. When that happens, you lose the variety that you bought, and the plant comes back from the rootstock, which is a completely different variety. Since we have cold winters here, I grow non-grafted roses, and even if we have a horribly cold winter, they will come back from the ground, and because there's no rootstock, it will be the exact same variety that I bought. And that means I don't have to mulch my roses this time of year. This is the time of year to plant spring blooming bulbs. I'm talking about things like daffodils, tulips, rock garden iris, crocuses, and so on. And here's how I look at spring blooming bulbs. They are my reward for making it through yet another long, tough winter here in Spokane. They're very easy to grow, and they are so easy to find. You can get them at garden centers, grocery stores, home centers, online, and so on. I have a great video on planting bulbs in the fall, and I'll put a link to it in the description for this video on my YouTube channel. Now let me show you my favorite online company to order bulbs from. I've been ordering from them for years and I've never been disappointed. So here's my best source for all kinds of unusual and beautiful bulbs, and that is John Sheeper's Beauty from Bulbs. I do not have any kind of affiliate relationship with them, but when I find something that's great, I love to share it. So go ahead and check them out online because you will be amazed at what they offer. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I love birds. And one of the ways I help them get through our really tough winters is by not cleaning up our front flower beds. That's because many of the annual flowers and perennial flowers that I have in here have wonderful seed heads, and the birds can feast upon all of those seeds during the winter months. So you don't have to tidy everything up in the fall. Leave things for the birds to eat. Here are some flowers that birds love. Coneflowers, bee balm, gloriosa daisies, cosmos, zinnias, lavender, Russian sage, and black-eyed Susans. If you grew plants in clay pots or ceramic pots during the growing season, you need to empty them out, clean them, and move them somewhere protected from the weather. Maybe your basement, a shed, your garage, anything along those lines, because the freeze-thaw cycles that occur during the fall and winter will break these types of pots. Fall is the time to plant garlic, which you will harvest next summer. And guess what? That's the topic of next week's video, so I'll show you exactly how to do it. If you have never grown garlic before, it's very easy, and what you'll want to do is go to a garden center or order some garlic bulbs online, and then you'll be planting the individual cloves. What we've been doing is every year we reserve a few bulbs for the next planting. So stay tuned for the video. Fall is also a great time to plant trees, shrubs, and perennials. Plus you can get great closeout deals at your local nurseries. By planting them in the fall, they'll have the fall and winter months to establish a good root system, and that means they can hit the ground running in the spring. You'll recall I shot a video a few weeks ago while I was planting up this bed in our back garden. All of the plants are doing great, and that illustrates my point. This is such a great time of year to plant them. Fall is also a great time of year to divide herbaceous peonies. Those are the ones that don't have the woody stems. The most important thing you need to know about dividing this type of peony is that when you replant the chunks that you've divided, don't let the top of the chunk be any lower than 2 inches at the very most below the soil surface. Otherwise, it won't bloom. This is my vanilla strawberry panicle hydrangea, and as you can see, it is covered in hundreds of blooms. This has been such a joy. The thing is that during the winter we get lots of high winds. These get bashed about, and then they break, sometimes damaging some of the branches in the plant, and I find them all over the place. So I've gotten into a habit every fall of trimming off just the flower heads. Now, if you are growing hydrangeas, the first thing you need to know, if you're not growing vanilla strawberry, is what variety is it, and does it bloom on new wood or old wood? So what does that mean? These ones bloom on new wood that sprouts on the plants in the spring. So I know that if I cut off these flower heads, I will not impact next year's bloom. If you have a variety that blooms on old wood, you're pruning off next year's blooms. And it's very easy, if you do know the variety, to do a web search and find out which does it bloom on, old wood or new wood. If you don't know the variety, like let's say you bought a new house and there's a hydrangea in the landscape, just don't worry about pruning it at all. Let it go through a year and see which kind of wood it blooms on. So I've got a bit of work ahead of me to get these off, but it's definitely worth my while because I don't want the plants to get damaged in the winds, and I certainly don't want a gazillion of these flower heads all over our yard. Don't prune your raspberry and blackberry canes while the leaves are still green, because that means they're still conducting photosynthesis, which will put energy into the plants so you get a bountiful harvest next year. I have a great video on pruning raspberries and blackberries. I'll put a link to the video in the description on my YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, write in your garden journal. Assess what went well this year and what didn't go so well. Make plans for next year while everything is still fresh in your mind. This is the garden journal that I started using this year. It is from Linda Vader, and it's a 5-year journal, so that will make it really easy for me to compare year after year. So here's an example of what I've been doing. You can see that here is May 19 for 2024. Then there will be room for 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028. And I have been noting different types of gardening things I've been doing, things that maybe were a bit of a goof on my part, something unusual that happened, maybe a recommendation that someone gave me for a variety of a flower or a vegetable. All of this information is so helpful, and it's also how we become better gardeners every single year. So if you're not using a journal, I certainly recommend this one. Or you don't need anything fancy, just use a notepad or a notebook and you're off and running. Above all, take the time to enjoy the beauty that's around you, because this is an amazing time of year. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening.